Great, thank you. Good evening. I'm now calling the Tuesday, September 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District Board of Commissioners to order. The time is 7:02 p.m. Please note we're conducting a hybrid meeting which allows staff and members of the public to attend this meeting via virtual teleconference. The hybrid meeting will be video recorded and posted on the district's website. And because we are video conferencing, we will follow a strict protocol for the benefit of the recording. I will indicate when commissioners, staff, presenters, and the public can provide comments. If you've called into the meeting and are not using webcam, please state your name prior to providing your comment for the benefit of the recording. Please practice considerate video conferencing etiquette by muting your line when you're not speaking and limiting distractive behavior on camera. District Clerk Vargas, please conduct a roll call.
Okay, Commissioners, I will be conducting all roll calls this evening in the same order. Please remember the order so that you are prepared to provide your comment or vote. President Spreen.
Here.
Vice President Sherlock.
Here.
Commissioner Basigi.
Here.
Commissioner McDonald.
Here.
Commissioner Tonka. Commissioner Tyson.
Here.
Commissioner Warren.
Here.
And we have 6 commissioners present, which is a quorum. And for the benefit of the recording, I'm also going to conduct a presenters, consultants, and staff roll call. Santa Clara County Fire Department Fire Chief Kirkhow.
Present.
Thank you. Foothill De Anza Community College District Archivist White.
Here.
Thank you. Fector and Company Financial Audit Consultant German.
Here.
Thank you. Municipal Resource Group Strategic Planning Consultant Scott.
Here.
Thank you. Fryer and Loretta Engineering Consultant Tarantino.
Present.
Thank you. Jackson's Drone Videographer Consultant Ricketts.
Present.
Community Education Risk Reduction Manager Gluhan.
Present.
Emergency Services Manager Beebe.
Present.
Programs Planning Grants Manager Woods.
Present.
Thank you. Technical Analyst / Project Manager Cronin. There he is.
Present.
Thank you. General Analyst Georgie.
Present.
Field Manager Harmon.
Here.
Finance Manager Morreale.
Present.
General Manager Logan.
Present.
Deputy County Counsel Forbat.
Present.
And presenters, consultants, and staff are accounted for.
Thank you, District Clerk Vargas. Now moving on to item 2, Commission President remarks. All I'm going to say is that all of us who are here in the building can just take a deep breath, and all of you who are in the Bay Area on Zoom, just look out your window. I think that's nature's way of reminding us why we should take tonight seriously, because you can just smell the wildfires in the air. It kind of surprised me. I was at home most of the day, and as I drove here, it's like, why does it look so apocalyptic out here? And I had to look on my phone to find out that this is all the wildfire smoke coming down again. So it was perfect timing to remind us why this is important stuff that we're here tonight. And I appreciate everyone's time for us to be here to address these kind of issues. Okay, moving on to item 3, public comment. Persons wishing to address the commission on any subject not on the agenda may do so now. Please note, however, the commission is not able to undertake extended discussion or action tonight on items not on the agenda. Items may be referred to staff for appropriate action, which may include placement on the next available agenda. District policy is to limit public testimony to 3 minutes per speaker unless the number of speakers requires the commission president to impose shorter time limits. Do we have any public comment on items not on the agenda? I think I see one here in the building. Go right ahead.
Alan Epstein, I live in the district. I would just like to ask about the CWPP District Annex 4. I did not see it on the agenda and would just like to hear what the status is on it. Thank you very much.
I don't think there's anything to be updated here this evening, which is why I think it'll be coming back in a future agenda. And I've had no information on it since the last one either. So sorry to have nothing to provide. Thank you for the question. Any other public comments? Nothing online? Great, thank you. Let's see, we will move on to item 4, agenda amendments and changes. I think we have several changes to the agenda this evening. I will start with the first one, which is that we will be moving item 10 to a future meeting. That's the procurement of the fire truck. The reason for that being that we had some comments from the public, which has some good comments to address. the item that's been out in the public packet, and we wanted a chance to address those and get those cleaned up, and also get back with the county council who has prepared that for us, which is not Council Forbath here. So we just want to make sure we did a complete incorporation of everyone's comments, both between the public and us and county council, to make sure it was all, that everyone's very happy with it. So we will like to bring that back next month. And there's nothing pressing to do it this month. So want to make sure we get the item top to bottom. So that will be moving item 10 to a future meeting. And I believe we have 2 changes to the wording, which I believe Council Forbath will explain.
Yes, staff is proposing for item 5E to make a modest change to the description of the amendment for clarity. So it will now say it's to approve the 7th Amendment to the Professional Services Agreement for Video Services with Jackson Ricketts, dated July 28, 2020, to extend the term to November 1st, 2024, to expand the scope to include additional videos, and to restate compensation, with all other terms and conditions to remain the same. And item 13A, similarly a minor change to what's listed in the agenda, rather than have the effective date be no later than October 4th, 2023. The effective date will be as of the date the agreement is fully executed.
Great. Would any commissioners have any other changes to items or changes of the order of items? Not expecting any, seeing any. Great. I'd like to entertain a motion to revise the titles of agenda items 5E and 13A as outlined by legal counsel Forbath, and also to move item 10 to a future meeting. Will the commissioner making the motion, the commissioner seconding the motion, please state your names for the recording.
Warren so moves.
Thank you.
Sherlock seconds.
Great. Any commission discussion on those? You've had your chance already. Any public comment on the agenda changes?
Please correct me if I'm speaking at the wrong time, but I have a comment on the item that's 5E that was just commented on. If you'd like me to make
It would only be about the change of the title, not about the item itself, would be my understanding.
But there will be an opportunity to comment on the items that are on the consent calendar in the future.
Yes, on the consent calendar, yes.
I'll wait
Yes.
to the next item, sorry.
Oh, great, no problem, thank you. Let's see, okay, no, any other discussion here? Seeing none, let's take a roll call vote.
President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Basigi,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to item 5, the consent calendar. Let's see here. Any comments from staff on these items? Any discussion? Seeing none, okay. Any questions from the commission on any of the consent items? Seeing none. I will entertain a motion for the consent items. The commissioner making the motion, the commissioner seconding the motion. Please state your names.
Tyson moves.
Basigi second.
Thank you. Okay. Any public comment on these items, which I believe there is?
Thank you. I'd like to comment on item number 5E. As I've mentioned to the district commissioners in the past, I think it's a poor practice the way the commissioners are continuing to extend these contracts. This is the 7th amendment to the contract with Jackson Ricketts that started on July 28th, 2020. And the reason why I think it's a bad practice is evident by the economics of the situation. To date, based upon the financial statements, the district has spent $117,000 with Jackson Ricketts, but the commission has only approved $85,000. The lawyer suggested that the contract just needed to restate the amount to $162,000. I don't believe that's correct. I believe you need to increase the contract to $162,000. And that only represents a $44,800 increase from the amount that's already been spent to date. Now, that may be sufficient to meet the needs for this year. I can't say. Last year, it was spent $61,000. The year before that, $48,000. So I just would like to say that I really think you should issue new contracts each year and know what you're paying for and know what you're receiving in regard to that, so that the potential for overspending in addition to what's been authorized by the commission is alleviated. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. Any other comments? Anything online? Seeing no hands up. Okay. Any other commissioner comments? Seeing none, let's take a roll call.
Okay, President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Basigi,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes, with an abstention from item 5A.
Right, and, oh, excuse me. The motion passes 6-0, one absent and one abstaining on item 5A only.
Thank you so much. We will now move on to item 6, receiving the district archive presentation. Emergency Services Manager Beebe will please introduce this item.
Thank you, President Spreen. I'm honored to introduce this exciting presentation. Just to give you a quick background, the district was contacted by the Foothill De Anza College District archivist, Chris White, regarding some items that she found in their building that she thought we may be interested in. So tonight we have several items on display for the commission and public to see right on this table over here, as well as a presentation with a brief history of the building and the Los Altos Fire Department. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chris White, again, the Foothill De Anza Community College archivist. Chris, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you. Let me get started. I don't know if it's going to be exciting. That was a hold up. All righty, there you go. So my name is Chris White. They call me the archivist. I say I landed on it by accident, but I reside in the archives for Foothill De Anza Community College District, live in the carriage house, which at one time used to be the firehouse for the Los Altos, excuse me, the Los Altos County Fire Protection District. That's what it was called at the time. And so I think it's important to understand the history, and I'm not a historian, archives don't do history, but you're going to see some common themes that you were probably running into today. And with that, we'll go with the first. So here's the timeline. So Foothill De Anza, Foothill College, actually, it started out as Foothill College, was formed in 1957. In 1959, at the time, the Los Altos County Hills Fire Department District was searching for another location for a fire department because Los Altos Hills was growing. More and more land that was once ranch land was being divided up, more homes were being built. They had this location down in Los Altos, but response time wasn't going to be fast enough to meet the needs for the people in the hills. And at the same time, Foothill College was building a new campus. And we had a superintendent at the time, his name was Calvin C. Flint, who was very forward thinking, and he thought it would be advantageous to have a fire station close to our campus because it was newly built. And so the rationale that he used was that it would give fire equipment close to it, close to the campus. It could potentially provide a fire program training for students. And he liked a little more authority on campus and felt like if we also had a fire department along with the police department we had, that would be less apt to have turbulent times that were already existing in the 1960s. And obviously for the fire protection district, it was an opportunity to get a building at no cost on land in an area that they wanted to be. But if you'll notice, it took from 1959 when the offer was first made until 1962 when they actually agreed to put the fire station there. And I gave that information to Victoria. I didn't include it in here, but one of the primary reasons was funding, which I'm sure you guys are familiar with today, was how were we going to fund it? The land and the building were owned by Foothill De Anza. The building was leased to the fire district, but it was operated by the city of Los Altos. So imagine that funding structure and how challenging that was going to be to figure out how to get there. And so they laid out their plan as best as they could, and they offered it to, to the community, but the community really pushed back on tax raises and that kind of stuff. So finally in 1962, they agreed. And in that agreement, they agreed that they would lease the building for $1 a year. It's a 15-year agreement with a 5-year, renewal or dropout. They agreed to split the cost with the fire district fronting most of the cost. We had some specific requirements, but the total project cost $35,000 and it opened on May 1st, 1963. And one of the ways that they were going to offset costs was having a student firefighter program. Now, to this day, Foothill doesn't have a fire academy. We have an EMT and a paramedic program, but they never got around to getting a fire program. Now, Mission College has it. And so we sort of, as community colleges, try not to overlap too closely in programs. But that program was one of the ways that it was going to offset the costs, because at the time, the fire chief, whose name was Richard Bassett, estimated that it was going to cost about $70,000 a year to staff a 10-member fire station 24 hours a day. And they were already having a hard time getting the $35,000 that they needed to build or renovate the facility. Another $75,000 annual with 3 different fiscal operating agencies was a challenge, and one of those ways is they offset it with students. Those students, they started out with 8. They were hoping for 10 to 12. They were paid $50 a month stipend and room and board. And in return, they had to agree to work an 8-hour shift every other day and one full 24-hour day on the weekend. There was no, they did not get any academic credit for it. There was no formal student plan for it. It literally was just student employment is what it was, along with some workforce training. Unfortunately, there was no curriculum development around it at the time. But it did sort of wind up paying itself off. In 1964, there was a fire right behind the school, one of the houses. It was the mayor of the time, I forget his name. But the students, because the station was there so quickly, they weren't able to save the house, but they were able to save priceless heirlooms, pictures, all the stuff that you would imagine people would have over centuries living in the hills. But this was the part that became significant, particularly for the fire district and actually for Foothill De Anza as we move forward. On April 13th in 1977, the carriage house was placed on the National Register of Historical Places, which makes it incredibly challenging to do any changes or upgrades to the building. So as you can imagine, move forward another couple of decades, and a firehouse built in 1963 needs changes. And it was with seismic upgrades, renovations, it became too cost prohibitive. And so the district and the Los Altos Fire District entered into a different agreement, and they swapped land. And I don't have access to those records right now, so I'm not going to tell you exactly what that agreement was, but that's where the new El Monte station now resides. Foothill De Anza still owns the land, but the fire district owns the building and the operations and all of that before. And that is the quick update on what we have in this little old building. I'm super excited to say that the shower, which is my storage closet, will finally be going away because we're renovating the building finally because of seismic upgrades. And so the stuff that I gave to Victoria was literally just your history. And I think it's important to keep that story going because it changes because even though you think it changes over time, it really doesn't. You're still sort of fighting the same issues. As I get back into the building, hopefully next spring, I am confident I will find more documents that are related to the fire district and not necessarily Foothill De Anza, which is what archive is about. So I'll pass those along as well. Any questions?
Any comments, questions from the commissioners? Fascinating story. I had no idea. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I didn't either until I just started finding things.
Any other comments? Oops, hold on.
There we go. I just want to thank Chris very much for supporting us. And I just like to kind of point out, obviously, I've got a little Vanna issue with trying to get over to the special stuff over here. But we have a parking sign. It says no parking for the fire department. I think, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, you found that at an old shower upstairs somewhere. tucked
Yeah, downstairs
away.
is the, downstairs in my storage closet was the old shower. They just capped off the pipes and that's where everything was stored, and I found it in there because, you know, everybody saves everything.
Of course, it's a great place to store it. Also, too, I know she talked about the student program. We actually have a book, the original book that was created that talks about that student program. With her advice, I also have some storage items that are special to, you know, no acid and things like that, so we can restore and keep them nice. So I have one in the middle here, a binder that has all the original the student program. There's also 2 actual photos of the inside of that area. And then all of the original newspaper articles. I think there was like, Chris, I had to be like 40 or something. I was copying for a while. So great information. It talks about all of the things that happened that she's alluded to over those years. I believe that the articles, the first one starts in 1959 and ends up in 1964, and pretty exciting. They have a whole article about the commission and kind of commissioners at the time. So come check it out. I have copies of it all. If you'd like your own personal copy, I'm happy to do it for you. But this will be what we bring out to presentations and if people want to know more about the history of the district. And I hope to kind of continue. And again, if Chris finds anything else, we'll definitely update you. But thank you, Chris, for taking your personal time to come and talk to us. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for all you guys do. Take care. Good night.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's fascinating. Thank you, Emergency Service Manager Beebe, for putting that together. Let's see, any public comment on this item? Seeing none, we will move on to item 7. Item 7A is to receive a presentation of the fiscal year 23 draft audited annual financial report. Finance Manager Moriali, will you please introduce this item?
Yes, thank you, President Spreen, and thank you, Corey. Corey, I believe that is the auditor's presentation. I believe you need to put up.
Yeah, Scott, sorry, Scott, Scott, can I? Yeah, thank you.
No problem. And I'll just wait for that to start.
Sorry, I got dropped as one of the co-hosts, so I can't share. Give me a second.
Okay. Thank you, Corey. Okay, good evening, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, and Commissioners. It's a pleasure to present the financial audit for fiscal year 22-23. Whereas a while ago in late 2022, staff was discussing where the fiscal year 23-24 budget was heading. Tonight, we're looking backward into the back mirror of the car and looking and asking, how did the prior year develop and how did it fare? The draft financials before you are in their fully completed form, and that allows a month's time for review and public access before final approval when it returns in October. Next slide, please. The presentation will be short and aims to cover the following areas of discussion. I'll provide a high-level summary of fiscal year 22-23 with a focus on operations and major trends. I'll discuss the structure of the audit document really just for the benefit of our readers and our viewers that see it tonight and also read it over the next few weeks. I will introduce our keynote speaker, and that's Mr. Scott German. He's the lead auditor with Vector and Company, and he will provide his independent report. And lastly, Scott and I and Corey will be available for questions and comments at the end of our combined presentations. And you can stay on that slide, Corey, that's fine. The recommendation for this agenda item is to receive the draft AFR and provide comments, questions prior to its final return on October 17th to this commission. We're also seeking tonight just approval from the commission to submit this draft on a preliminary basis to the County of Santa Clara. And the reason why we give it to them so early is that they start preparing their annual financial reports. So they just want to start that process internally, but they understand that it won't be finally approved by this commission until October 17th. And next slide, please. The structure of the audit report is displayed in this graphic. They're typically pretty common amongst agencies. The financial statements, or what the industry calls the AFR, or the annual financial report, contains 5 key sections. The first and very important one is the auditor's opinion. It's followed by the financial section. It's followed by disclosure notes, by budget to actual reportings, and a report on internal controls. Although the entire AFR is important and represents the essential measure of fiscal performance, I would highlight the management discussion and analysis, which is the MD&A in section 2, the disclosure notes and the fund statements, and the budget to actual statements in section 4, which provide really an executive overview, and looking at the narratives and disclosures really hone in on what happened during the year, and also give you a good picture of the budget to actual performance. Next slide, please. Scott will speak to the overall engagement, but the results of the audit came in well, as they did last year. In a nutshell, the audit report rendered what is commonly known as a clean opinion or unqualified opinion. No deficiencies were noted, no areas of non-compliance were cited, and no material adjustments were made. I tip my hat to Corey Vargas for maintaining a tight and timely recording of transactions during the year, maintaining proper documentation and approval trails, following policy. These are all important steps in making sure that you get through an audit successfully. As I shared with Scott in the engagement, with these good results as leverage, we look forward to further exciting areas of improvement as we move into the next year. That would include implementing a new online purchasing card model, updating and re-engineering our financial systems as we move forward, exploring some cloud-based transparency portals, building project accounting systems, and looking at long-term metrics as well. Next slide. Thank you, Corey. Scott will speak to the numbers, but let me take a moment to present the operations that really are fueled by the dollars that were spent that you see in the audit. First of all, key highlights for this year include the creation of a 2023 strategic plan. Although the dollars were not large in that effort, the impact of that effort is large strategically. This year also saw the continued high fire season risk funding of fire crews at the Palo Alto Hills Park Fire Station. That was in the amount of $435,000. Completion of IHFR evacuation routes and vegetation management projects along Page Mill and Ascradero for a total of $230,000. Expanded integrated hazardous fuel reduction, defensible space chipping, and debris removal programs, which was a strong performance over the prior year. We saw this year's expenditure exceed last year's by $305,000, exceeding and reaching an amount of $735,000. That's an increase of 71% over the prior year. And then continued essential fire hydrant infrastructure maintenance at a cost of $137,000 and $120,000 for upgrades and relocations of those hydrants. Next slide, please. This year, the district also started fortifying staffing resources, which was a key theme of the fiscal 23-24 budget that we're currently in. Staff training was accelerated to make up for pandemic deferrals and refresh and strengthen skills. This year saw the first full year of funding for the general analyst and programs planning and grants manager that oversees the important planning process and the Cal OES FEMA grant process. You also saw the funding of a part-time budget manager this year as well. This year also saw the hiring of a part-time technical analyst project manager to assist with programs, projects, and activities that rely on deliverables for successful implementation and completion. Next slide, please. Also this year, a part-time operations projects manager was hired, really to assist with the efficiency of the programs and help with daily operations. This position was funded from salary cost savings from the vacant operations manager. Lastly, although not a big dollar amount, but important relative to the other item we'll be discussing tonight regarding technology, this year also saw the purchase of district-owned computer equipment for nearly all staff members. Next slide, please. In viewing the financials for the year, it's clear that fiscal year 22-23 kind of foretells and mirrors the message that was given in the 23-24 budget. And that message was to leverage the district's fiscal strength to not only sustain and enhance, but to grow the resources necessary to deliver resources at a heightened level. The fiscal results above reflect the robust revenue trending and expenditures coming in under budget, given position vacancies, trim staffing levels, the COVID hurdles that were presented to us, and program deferrals. These actual results speak volumes as to why the 23-24 budget was designed just as it was, and why the work plans that you will be seeing in October are being developed as we speak. Consequently, the district ended the year with an even stronger financial position. So with that, on the next slide, I am happy to and pleased to introduce Scott German. He's again is the auditor in charge who led the audit, and he will report his independent results. Thank you so much.
Okay, can everyone hear me and see me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. Thank you for having me tonight. Thank you, Russ, for really doing all my job. And I should finish it right here. But I'll go ahead and give you a few more highlights. First thing, one thing we always like to do is have some required communications with you folks and emphasize what the audit is. Remember, we're here to check and review and make sure that the financial statements fairly present in a materially accurate way. We are not looking at all the nickels and dimes. Management, the commission and staff are responsible for the accurate presentation of the financial statements. We review and audit that to make sure that we agree with your assessment, but you're still accepting full responsibility. You select the accounting policies, the financial statement presentation, and the implementation of a system of internal controls, all of which, at your district have been highly efficiently implemented, and I appreciate that. The district policies are summarized in note 2. Standard ones, basic presentation, how we measure the numbers, when you get your property taxes, and equity classifications. And there was no changes in the equity classifications from the prior year. Specific to the district, really the only one that was very specific was the capital asset capitalization and depreciation policy. We're responsible for forming an opinion based on what we see, the evidence that we're presented. And remember, we're providing reasonable assurance, not absolute assurance. Had a board member at another district ask me what it would cost for us to provide absolute assurance. And I told them, if we started out at about $2.5 million, we could go from there. But you will never be able to afford absolute assurance, and it is not cost beneficial. Difficulties encountered, none. Corrected misstatements, none. We had some adjustments, but those were all presented by the district and based on information that they received after we started. Disagreements with management, none. We're not aware of any consultations with other accountants, no other findings or issues, and no other matters that we need to bring to your attention. As Russ stated, we did issue a clean opinion. in the opinion, it explains, how we arrived at that and what our responsibilities are and your responsibilities that we just discussed. Really a brief overview. What I wanted to do this year is show you the difference between the two sets of financial statements that you'll see presented. We have the fund statements, which is essentially the current items that the district has. So cash, accounts receivable, prepaid expenses, accounts payable, those things. You have a net equity fund balance of $38 million. We add to that the fixed assets at net, and we subtract out some accrued compensated absences that have been accrued to get to the net position, which is the total long-term equity in the district of 40 million. So as you can see, really the only differences between those two are the fixed assets and those accrued compensated absences that generally don't get paid out of current resources. We look at the income statement. We have revenues in excess of expenditures of 5.4 million. That's again on the current basis. The way that GASB wants us to treat things for the government fund statements, we don't recognize depreciation. So in the net position, the governmental activities report, we do. So we have to subtract that out. We bought fixed assets, which for government purposes is an expenditure. For government-wide activity reporting, it's not. It's capitalized. And then there's that compensated absences that we accrued this year. So the purchase of the capital assets, those are the computers that Russ talked about. Depreciation is just the amount that is recorded ratably over the life of the assets, like any other depreciation would be. Some highlights: total cash and investments, 39 million. Again, net capital assets at book value, 1.8. Total liabilities, 656. Revenues of 15.7 million and expenses of 10.3. Notes to the financial statements, again, it's highlights, it adds explanation to the numbers on the face of the financial statements. Budget versus actual. Revenues were over budget by 1.7, expenses under by 3.2, and a lot of that is just timing of when you could actually do the work. So that's why that happened. Net income was over budget by 4.9. Now, when you have a over budget of revenue and an under of expenses, that's what you get, is a good positive there. Again, variances, district emerging from the COVID protocols and just timing, really. Again, like I wanted to emphasize, the controls that are in place at the district are very good. There's strong desire by management to present accurate and true financial information. That was evident in when they found even small differences that they wanted to correct them. It wasn't a matter of me trying to convince them they needed to. It was, here, let's fix this. So I think that is a key indicator that we like to see. We like to emphasize that the commission's oversight and asking of questions of management is always a key component to making sure that the internal control system continues to work. Thank you. It's a pleasure working with your staff, and we look forward to finishing this year and hopefully continuing on next year. If there's any questions, be more than happy to take them.
Thank you very much. Any comments or questions from the commission? I see Jim look like he's about to say something.
I was just going to say kudos to the staff. They did a supremely fantastic job.
Please do.
The auditor wasn't able to find even a non-cross T or non-dotted I. So,
yeah, there's not really much you can add to what's just been said. I mean, that's what we want to hear, is how well run this organization is, and this just echoes it and illustrates it. I went through the report, and there's not a black mark in it. So I want to thank our staff for getting a grade A, on the report card. So thank you Corey and Russ. And,
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you, Mr. German, for, helping us, look into ourselves and make sure that we're on the right path. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Yeah, President Spreen, I wanted to thank Scott as well, because we've all heard about how difficult it is to hire these days, and Scott's firm is not immune from that. And it's been difficult for them to keep their staffing resources up to par. And so they really did put in an extra effort this year to make sure that we made this on a timely basis. So I wanted to thank him as well.
Are there any public comments on this item? Hang on, we got one.
Alan Epstein, I'd like to reinforce the statements that have been made. I think that the report is an excellent report. It clearly delineates the efforts of the district and is accurate by everything that I can observe. I do have a few comments that I could make, and I'll just submit them to the staff. There's a couple little things that I saw that I think could be improved with regards to reporting about the budget differences and the projections for next year. But all in all, I thought it was very well done. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Thank you for the comments. Any online comments? Not seeing any raised hands. I guess that's it then. So if that's the case, we will now move on to item 7B, which is to approve a draft of the audited fiscal year 23 audited financial results for preliminary submission to the County Controller Treasurer Department, as Mr. Morreale sort of highlighted for us earlier. Let's see, Finance Manager Morreale, please provide this report to discuss this again.
Well, essentially, you've heard the report. So this would just basically have the commission's approval for us to preliminarily send it to the county so they can start their process. Again, this will come back October 17th for its final approval, but this gives us the ability to send it on a preliminary basis.
Great, thank you. Any questions on the commissioners? Nope. Okay, let's see. Do we have to take let's entertain a motion for this? Yes, please. Who can I get to start a motion?
We approve.
Great.
Sherlock moves.
Second from this side of the table?
Warren seconds.
Thank you so much. Any comments or questions? Seeing none. Any public comments on this? Not expecting any. Great. Let's have a roll call.
President Spreen,
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock,
Yes.
Commissioner Basigi,
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald,
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson,
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
Right, motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you so much to Corey and Russ. This is a feather in our cap, and I'm so pleased to have this announcing the kind of work we've done here. So thank you. Now move on to item 8, the Fire Chief Report. Item 8A is the monthly Fire Chief Report for August 2023. 8B is the Palo Alto Fire Station 8 report for August 2023. And Fire Chief Kirkow is here in person to provide reports.
President Spreen and Commissioners, I'm glad to be able to be here in person. I'm going to start with the item of 8B first. There was an error in that one, and I'll address it in 8A as we work through the calls. But before I do that, one of the things that I do want to bring and highlight to the commissioners that not only affects county fire, but it also affects your sheriff, which you have a contract for, as well as county ambulances. County COM, after years in the making, went live with a brand new CAD on September 12th. That was a huge endeavor for multiple years. Again, I think I was part of that process in 2016. And the reason why I highlight is because each one of those entities have a different deployment model, different needs, different communities that they serve, and really working through all of the needs and requests that the sheriff's office put in, the county ambulance through the vendor, which is AMR, through county fire and county parks. So being able to go live with that new CAD means that we are able to move to the next phase of county fire's abilities, which is automated vehicle location deployments, because currently on the previous CAD, we could not do that because we just had technology that we could find the engines and the rescues and the trucks But the CAD itself, built in the 1970s, did not have the ability to be able to dispatch based on that AVL data. So those are really good pieces for not just the fire side, but also for your sheriff and for your law partner here, or for our law partner here. And then the other thing that I wanted to highlight, President Speen, that you mentioned, the smoke that's here today, back in, I'm looking at a report from August 25th, we had 37 firefighters from the operational area, that's XSC, of which 26 were county fire firefighters, of which your engine 374 out of El Monte Station was one of the strike team units that was part of 2310 Charlie. So though they are back home, we still have members out on these wildfires up north. That's on the California-Oregon border. So you, with the sort of the dovetail of the financials there is real good that happens, not just, again, locally here, but throughout the state or wherever help is needed. That's what the California Mutual Aid system is for, and you are definitely a part of that through providing resources for Santa Clara County Fire's operational arm, if you will. So with that said, is there any questions before I move on to the report? Okay. So I mentioned there was an error in the Station 8 report, which we're going to submit a corrected error, which only shows 2 calls, and that addresses a comment that I did receive before the commissioner, before this meeting started, which there were several calls that Station 8 members did go to, one of which was just outside of that area. We'll make that correction. I'll kind of go back up. Why don't we start, if you don't mind, with the actual 8A report, and then I'll address anything else. So August, again, saw a couple of hot days, but again, we're in this El Nino cycle, which we anticipate will impact California, specifically our area, in which we're getting kind of these weird overcast days. And when I say weird, unusual, in which you're getting fuels that still are drying. The fuels out there that the grass areas, even though we're doing a lot of good mitigation efforts, are still going through its normal cycle of humidity removal, if you will, or just making it more prone to be able to light. But with that said, we really haven't seen an uptick in local fires, which is good. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So your call volume is pretty stable, pretty typical of previous months as a whole. Nothing really exciting here. I will call out a few calls that were part of the report. We had a call on, it looks like this was 8/29, and it was for an area in Rancho San Antonio County Park. And County Fire responded to the report of vegetation. This was provided to the general manager. I believe it was provided to you, but I do want to highlight one thing. When local partners go and respond to vegetation fires, a lot of times the way we work is making sure that we have the right access points. So instead of having units rush in, we will often stage them. And that means that we go and look and make sure we have, if you will, the breadth of what we have in front of us, and then we may point units and resources into another location. Every single county fire rig, as well as your partners in the local area, have access to gates. The state, this is CAL FIRE, may or may not, because remember, the state, just like you saw, or what I mentioned, is the fires that are up and down the states, those units go to. So although we do have units that are dedicated to Santa Clara County unit, if there's a fire, those units go, and they may replace them with a unit from Monterey. They may replace them with a unit from another area entirely from the state. But every single fire engine does have the capacity to access gates. Are there any questions about the incident that occurred there in Rancho San Antonio. So again, partners were staged, and then we were able to make access and mitigate the fire. And I think it was, the size was 0.8 acres. The other incident that occurred, and again, I'm just going to read this just because it was right outside of Station 8's area. This is Palo Alto, Station 8. For whatever reason, because our report for the Palo Alto, the 8B was incorrect, Palo Alto 365 did respond to that. And when I look at the report here, it looks like we sent a full complement of vegetation fire to that, as well as the Palo Alto Engine 365 to reported brush fire endangering a propane tank. Upon arrival of scene, Palo Alto Engine 365 had initiated fire attack and passed command to Battalion 74. And again, this is a place that is right outside of that Foothills Park, in which response time was critical, and Engine 365, staffed by Palo Alto in August, was able to get there in short order. So those are the major fires or incidents that occurred within the Los Altos Hills or adjacent to the Los Altos Hills, and could have been a risk to the community here that was mitigated with both county fire units as well as your partner Palo Alto units that are staffing Station 8.
Great, thank you. Any questions, comments from commission? Awesome.
Just, I know we're jumping the gun here. Last week, there was the fire up on Page Mill Road near the summit. Did the unit from Station 8 respond?
Yes, they did.
Excellent. Any public comments? Seeing none here, seeing none online. Great, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. Let's see, that moves us to item 9, General Manager Report. General Manager Logan and Strategic Planning Consultant Scott will be providing these reports.
Yes, thank you, President Spreen and Vice President Sherlock, commissioners, public, staff. You'll see before you tonight a good depiction of this month is being dedicated to Emergency Preparedness Month. That's a national recognition. And then also the county is dedicating the National Preparedness Month to community preparedness. And so you see a number of the various reminders out to the public on this event. And of course, all you have to do is go outside, take a nice whiff of the air, and realize you don't need a poster to remind you of what's going on in our community, which even stretches up to Oregon and Washington. So we are truly, all in it together when it comes to wildfire. We've been lucky here, but we are seeing our neighbors suffer in other regions of the country. Moving on then to how this emergency preparedness is being celebrated on the updates, events, and activities. You'll see that Santa Clara County is having an emergency preparedness fair, and there's information there. It's the 2nd annual emergency preparedness fair, and the public is invited, and the details are available September 23rd, 2023, being held in San Martin, California. And then continuing with the updates, events, and activities, the Fire Safe Summit is also being held. And I did see Seth Shallett on the Zoom call, and I would invite him to make comments if he would like, because this is an excellent opportunity for Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council is announcing its inaugural Fire Safe Council to the public, open to the public, and it's called Living with Fire. Is Seth there?
I am.
Oh, Seth, welcome.
Well,
Seth is the CEO of Fire Safe Council in Santa Clara County. And Seth, please tell us about this amazing event that you're going to be hosting.
Well, General Manager Logan, thank you for the impromptu ability to let the community know. We are holding our first inaugural event of what we hope will become an annual activity. And this year's summit will take place on October 10th at the Mountain Winery from 4:30 till 8 p.m. And our focus and theme is living with fire. And the main emphasis of the event is we really want to showcase what is happening with wildfire technology. So we've got a number of technology vendors, new entrepreneurs, established companies, and we certainly welcome the participation of everybody. You can see down below the URL, the website. You can go to the Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council Summit and click on the website and find out information. And I'm glad to follow up with any members of the community post-event if you have any questions. But again, thank you very much, Manager Logan. Appreciate the opportunity and our partnership.
Well, and thank you for bringing this to our community at a very wide, county-wide level. We appreciate it. Okay, moving on to the next slide. This is giving you a preview, these next two slides, of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District Work Plan Progress Report. And we're very excited because this opportunity came out of discussions between the commission and the general manager and our strategic plan facilitator. And in that was a request by the commission to provide more of a structure to our service areas and to what we do, and also to provide in that work plan deliverables, goals, objectives, how it relates to the budget, how it relates to the strategic plan. So we hosted a all-day session with all the staff on August the 4th and looked at all the activities we do, mainly from the chart of services, devised subject areas around each of those, and then said, well, who does these subject areas? And it just all fell into place with our various managers that are here today that work so hard to provide this community benefit to the public for fire safety, risk reduction, and community outreach and education. And so in doing that, now has emerged what we're going to present at the October meeting, and that is the work plan. So with that introduction, I'd like to have facilitator and consultant Marcy Scott please take us through these 2 pages of slides. Marcy, you there? You're on.
Yes, thank you, General Manager Logan. As she mentioned, following that August 4th meeting now, the written work plan is taking shape. And looking at the upper box on this slide on the right, where it says work plan, each service area features a work plan like this in an Excel sheet, featuring specific tasks, lead personnel, and timeframes. Tasks are projected out through fiscal year 27-28 to align with the current 5-year strategic plan. Other infographics, as in the lower box on the right, describe contributing resources and budget allocations by service area. Next slide, please. And the work plan is split into 8 service areas. And those are the blue boxes on the left. And just real briefly from the top, the first service area are sort of our typical projects, which are guided by the CWPP. Those include all of the evacuation route work and I-280. The second box service area deals with outreach, emergency preparations, and that would include the CERT programs and volunteers. And the third box is all about risk reduction and education, including the FireWise programs and other programs. The fourth is hydrants and related appurtenance, and all that is entailed with that area. The fifth addresses the agreement for 24/7 coverage for fire suppression and EMS services. And that is through the contract between Santa Clara County Fire Department and the district and paid by the district. And the sixth service area addresses the sustainability of the personnel and organization and strategic planning. The seventh covers finance, long-term financial planning and IT services. And then the eighth service area that is spelled out in the work plan addresses capital assets. Those would include El Monte Fire Station, various pieces of equipment, and the district-owned parcel. So this draft work plan is expected to be completed within the next week and submitted to the ad hoc subcommittee for review and comment. The full commission will then be presented with the final draft at the October 17th commission meeting for discussion and staff direction. And that concludes this work plan update. And back to you, General Manager Logan. Thank you.
Thank you, Consultant Scott. Very, very helpful. I'll just take a little break there. Are there any questions or comments as you see this start to unfold?
Any comments? Certainly, it's a very in-depth way to have responded to our request to get multi-year planning and really depth of planning in front of us. So I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I'm jealous
kinda-
of the ad hoc committee that gets to look at this first.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the review of the ad hoc committee, and it started out with just some brief conversation, and then it's just unfolded. So it says to me that the timing was right, the staff was mobilized, the projects gave us a lot to talk about, and we've got some real initiatives going here, and we're pulling the district into such a high level of activity and structure and infrastructure, all based around what we worked so hard to create, and that's the strategic plan and the budget resources that we have that is our benefactor from the taxpayers in the community. So we work to do you well. So thank you with that. We'll be back in October. Now moving on, very different topic, but very related and exciting too. The LAHCFD Countywide Fire Service Review. And honestly, I kind of challenge you. If you click on those hyperlinks, you won't come back out for a good half hour because there is so much to read there. And the reading is very, very fascinating. So what LAHCFD did is they provided a countywide fire service review. It's on their website. And they received all these initial responses from the community, from various agencies, from persons like myself, staff that's sitting here, and also from the LAHCFD Commission. And those are all compiled into hundreds and hundreds of pages. And it's really fascinating to read because you get to read what we think, what San Jose thinks, what Morgan Hill thinks, what the community at large within the county thinks, and about countywide fire protection and service. And of course, all of our fire providers, Central Fire certainly was heavily involved in that, representing all the various agencies that Central Fire represents, along with other fire departments like Mountain View and Palo Alto and San Jose. It goes on and on. So it's a huge, huge undertaking. And now we get to see the results of that and the reaction from the public to it. So that is provided, it's attached to this agenda item. And then also attached is our responses and the revised draft as a result of all those responses. And it's all there for your leisure to read. And it really is interesting. So I welcome you to do that. The next slide is a summary of what the results, the input from LAHCFD and the residents is all about. And that's culminated there in a summary statement. And so all resident and comment letters were very much in support of keeping LAHCFD as it stands. And the main focus of the letters and comments were that the residents appreciate the importance of local control. The residents see that larger organizations may not have the quality of service or connection with residents if it gets into a larger perspective. The value of programs and projects and services outweigh any nominal duplication efforts by having a commission. And there's a unique topography in Los Altos Hills makes local control necessary as other organizations do not have the same specialized needs. And what they're talking about here is WUI versus suburban. So all of those comments came from the residents who live here, work here, pay the taxes, and are very concerned about their fire protection. Comments were submitted by council members from the town and Los Altos Hills staff, and that pretty much concludes my comments on the LAHCFD fire study. And then moving to the next slide, again on National Preparedness Month, the district put out its September National Preparedness Month newsletter, which is there for you to take a look at. Listo, California provides a variety of preparedness topics, and Santa Clara County Office of Emergency Management is celebrating the Community Preparedness Month, which I talked about previously. And with that, it concludes the General Manager report. Happy to answer any questions and just delighted to bring this news to you.
Thank you very much, General Manager Logan. Any discussion or comments from the commission? All very complete. Thank you. Any public comment on any of these items from the General Manager? Seeing none here, seeing none online. In that case, we will move on. We will be skipping item 10 as it was removed under item 4, changes to the agenda. So we'll be moving on to item 11, which is reports on the district fire hydrants. And we'll be receiving reports from, let's see, Fryer and Loretta, engineering consultant Tarantino, and General Manager Logan providing
Yes.
us reports.
Yeah, thank you, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock. Just to start off, I would just like to introduce our engineering consultant from the Fryer and Loretta firm, Jeff Tarantino. And Jeff, if he could just take us through the last hydrant strike we had, and if it's been repaired, and just any comments. I think we're doing amazing in getting these hydrants repaired for the benefit of the fire department, so you have water in those hydrants when you need them. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, General Manager Logan. Thank you, President Spreen. So I'll go ahead and share my screen. I've got a go. All right, 1 second. So the last fire hydrant we struck actually was right before the last commission meeting in August. The hydrant strike occurred on Alena Road on a Saturday evening at about 10:30 at night. You can see in the center photo there, the hydrant was knocked off. The check valve, there was a bollard. You could, it's hard to see here, buried in the mud here. And the check valve functioned properly, so there was no significant leak. Percival Hills Water District responded, isolated the hydrant. We then were able to remove the check valve that functioned properly, install a new break-off check valve, and then reinstall the existing hydrant and install a new bollard to restore service. So you can see here, this black piece here, this is the new check valve. We were able to bring the hydrant back in service by August 21st. We had a couple of days of waiting for some parts for the check valve, but overall it was less than 10 days to get the hydrant back in service. With that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Any questions, comments? No, I appreciate how quickly it's amazing how many strikes we continue to have, but also how quickly they're managed and taken care of. So I really appreciate that. Great. Any public comments on that? Seeing none. Thank you so much, sir. And we will move on to item 12A. Emergency
No, we
service.
have, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry, did I miss 11?
11B, C,
Oh, I'm
and
sorry.
D. Yep.
Oh, yeah, so much more to go. I wanted to skip over 11 and just move on. Update on the Percival Hills Water District Water Main Replacement Project. General Manager Logan.
We have a lot going on with our hydrants. So Percival Hills Water District is replacing some water mains, and the district team provided the residents information pertaining to the hydrants and to the water main replacement plans. So just wanted to advise the commission of that. And I can move on to 11C if you would like.
Please.
Yes, which is to receive the report on the DEPS project. And this was very interesting to me because I had the opportunity to look back 2 years ago to remind myself, and now I'll remind the commission, that the commission approved the reimbursement for hydrant replacement, relocation, and additions in a prior agreement with Percival Hills Water District. The agreement is in the agenda materials. The CIP construction of the water main project is now completed, and Percival Hills Water District invoiced the district in accordance with the terms and conditions of the agreement, and the attached invoice is also in the materials. Fryer and Loretta team walked the project after the construction occurred to confirm the installation of the hydrants and confirmed the billing on the invoice. And you can see the Fryer and Loretta memo that's attached in this item. And with that, I'll ask Jeff Tarantino, consulting engineer, to provide any comments or answer any questions that the commission may have. But just in saying that, these oftentimes are 3-year projects, 2 or 3 year projects. When they start from the beginning of planning and design into then the agreement between our partner who provides the water main, we provide the hydrants, and then the conclusion, the walkthroughs, making sure everything is done properly, agreements are properly done, terms and conditions are accounted for, and then the public is benefited by this new water system and the new hydrants. The benefits are firefighters. So with that, Jeff, your introduction to the DEPS project.
Great, thank you, General Manager Logan. So I'm going to share my screen again here. So I just pulled out kind of 2 key tables from our report that was included with the agenda package. As General Manager Logan stated, all work is complete and accepted by Percival Hills Water District. My team did walk the site with both Percival Hills staff and their engineering consultants. to confirm all of the work that was contemplated as part of the agreement was completed in accordance with the terms and conditions of that agreement, as well as the construction documents. So on the right side of the screen here is the list of the 10 hydrants that were installed. And, I think one thing that's important to highlight is that Prisma Hills works with us, and we reuse fire hydrants and components whenever possible. And in this case, for this project, we reused for 7 of the hydrants. So whenever we have functional equipment that simply needs to be relocated and reinstalled to be attached to the new water main, that's the approach the design team from Prisma Hills takes, and that's something that I think is a very cost-effective method, an appropriate method for maintaining a functional system. And as we stated, the final cost is shown in the bottom left table there, and those costs were within the amount of the original agreement. With that, happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Jim, do you have a comment?
I have a rather silly question. I'm wondering, is there a completion check procedure that you apply? Because these are so critical. You want to make sure after they are installed, they actually function as intended. How do you check that? Just for my edification, I apologize for.
No, it's a good question.
No, it's an excellent question. So the typical procedure is the new water mains, when they're installed, the Prisma Hills construction contract requires that the construction contractor perform a series of tests. Most importantly, they perform a test, a pressure test, where it's governed by the American Water Works Association, where they basically fill the pipeline with water, pressurize it to a set pressure, and then that water main must hold that pressure for a minimum of 2 hours. And as long as that main is able to hold that pressure for the prescribed amount of time, then that main has been deemed as being properly installed. That pressure test does include the fire hydrant laterals, so we are seeing a pressure test of those laterals as well. It does not include water meters and residential laterals. That this pressure test that I'm describing happens before the water laterals are actually installed. So that's the primary way that the system is checked out before it is accepted, and then eventually brought into service to allow the existing main to be brought out of service.
Okay, thank you very much. This was very helpful.
And I guess the answer is you don't actually go run water through each hydrant to make sure it's active.
Yeah, all right.
That's correct. Yeah, but partly just from a drought perspective, that although we're not in a drought anymore, it is not standard to go ahead and open the hydrant valves to confirm it. We basically rely on the pressure test, where we know that the system has been filled and there's water available in the hydrants for when it's needed.
Great, thank you. Any other questions or comments here? Nope. See any public comments on that? Seeing none, great, thank you. Then we have an item D as well.
Yes, thank you, President Spring and Vice President Sherlock. At the August commission meeting, I advised the commission that I would execute an agreement with O'Grady Construction once it was prepared and reviewed and approved by County Council. The agreement is not yet prepared for review or execution, and F&L consultant engineer Tarantino can provide an update on the progress of the town CIP repaving project and the status of the O'Grady agreement for replacement of the hydrant valve covers and painting of the hydrants affected. So just giving you an update that nothing has proceeded on that. Mr. Tarantino, a couple of words on that?
Absolutely. We've actually made some progress as of a few hours ago. So we have confirmed final pricing with the contractor, O'Grady Paving, and F&L has been collaborating with County Council on a scope of work and preparing an agreement. So we're going to be marking the 5 fire hydrant valves along Prisma Road that will be raised as part of the work to complement the paving work. We'll be marking those valves this week. O'Grady has indicated to me that they will be starting the paving work next week. I don't know, he didn't provide a detailed schedule. They have a pretty large project. Only the work on Prisma Road affects fire district owned hydrant valves. So at this point, things are progressing, and the project should be completed in the next few weeks.
Okay.
The estimated cost on this project is within the general manager authority for expenditures, so I'll just go ahead and execute the agreement then once it's available, so not to hold up any work.
Great. And just I think we can characterize it for people that, I know this has been on the item quite a few months, we're just been waiting for the town to sort of have this project come to fruition. We're the tail end of the dog on this thing. And so we just sort of waiting for all those things to get readjusted and so forth. And so that's why it's still here. We're just waiting for our chance to finish up at the end of the project.
Yes, thank
Right.
you. Again, good example of partnership between the town and the district, and making sure that roads get repaved and that our hydrant valve covers get put back on, and that all is done, properly through the construction process and through agreements.
Thank you, Jeff, for staying attentive to that project as it's been pushed back and so forth, and we're on top of it. So thank you.
Good, thank you. End of that report.
Okay. Any other comments from the commission here? Seeing none. Any public comments on that? Seeing none. Now we will move on to item 12 that I was so excited to move on to. This will be item 12A, Emergency Services Manager Projects, Programs, and Events. And this will be Emergency Services Manager Beebe and Jackson's Drones Videographer Consultant Ricketts providing us reports.
Thank you, President Spreen. I will start my report tonight. Can you go to the next slide, please? It's talking about our emergency preparedness event this past month. District staff project manager Captain Cronin represented the district along with CERT and Teen CERT at the town's 2023 hoedown. You can see him there with his specialized district cowboy hat. Those will be for sale later tonight, just kidding. And our CERT trailer in our notorious location next to our favorite pig, Kevin Bacon. He's in the background. He likes to stay that way. But our district staff that was there with our teen certs and certs, really focused on, talking about our projects and our programs and doing some cert and teen cert recruitment. Do you have anything to add to that, Mr. Cronin?
The event seemed to be very well attended. We were interestingly placed right at the entrance, so people came, past us on the way in and the way out. We had a number of CERT people talking about the CERT programs. I had an opportunity to address people and ask them about, what do you know about your fire district? Do you have any questions about our services? What services do you know? And I was out there like a used car salesman, hucking our wares. I met a lot of interesting people. One particular young lady, she is in the Roos Ridge area, and she is grandfathered in on her property until her passing, in which time it will then go to Mid-Penn. So what an incredible resource for institutional and local knowledge. So I made sure I grabbed her number and phone number because we'll be working with her on the strategic community fuel break. Engine Rescue 74 was there. We had no medical events or anything like that, but it was great to have them there. Just an amazing opportunity to talk to people and really push our programs. Anything else you want?
Thank you. I think you were supposed to update us on Kevin Bacon's unfortunate.
Oh, Kevin has arthritis, and so he's on a strict diet. So please only feed him the fruits and vegetables that they tell you to feed him because he's recovering.
Excellent report. Thank you so much. And thank you for coming out and supporting the district and doing such an awesome job. Okay, next slide. Communications team, we are chugging along, moving towards our next year projects, but also making sure that we're sending out our monthly newsletter. I think General Manager Logan already kind of showed a little bit of that. But one of the things I'd like to highlight is our upcoming safety fair, Touch a Truck event on September 30th. It's going to be from 9 to 11 at Gardner Bullis School. We're going to have lots of fun things out there. We're going to have some fire apparatus. We're going to have an ambulance, sheriff officer vehicle, public works, very popular with their tractors and gator. We'll have green waste out there, and we're also going to have a shakeout trailer. District staff will be there talking about our projects and programs again. As you can see from the report from Mr. Cronin, that it's really good. We're out there talking to the public. We learn so much at each event that we take into our programs and our projects. So Teen CERT has asked to man a table of Stop the Bleed, and they want to do fire extinguisher safety. They want to branch out and start to train the public. So we're gonna have them do that, and come on out, get a cup of Joe. They're gonna have they're great coffee carts. If anyone hasn't had that, it's great coffee. Donut holes and some face paint. So come out and support the district. Love to see all you guys. So that'd be Garner School, September 30th from 9 to 11 in the morning. Also want to highlight, we have really been pushing, as General Manager Logan said, wildfire, action plans. So we did send out, I don't know if you guys saw the last newsletter, but there's a link. It was pretty cool to do like a little wildfire action plan. I did it myself. And then we also are still pushing our setting up for Alert SEC. Next time around, I have to still find out what we're going to do, but I'd like to do something along the lines of starting to talk about maybe some holiday safety. We're getting into the holiday season, so. Now I'd like to introduce another special presentation. We've had a lot great presentations tonight. Jackson Ricketts from Jackson Drones is going to present a report for you. So Jackson, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Sorry, I've been experiencing some technical difficulties here. Good evening, commissioners, residents, and staff. At Los Altos Hills County Fire District, one of our main challenges is helping our residents understand the rationale behind our actions. In recent years, Los Altos Hills County Fire District team has been working on essential evacuation route projects that are designed to remove hazardous vegetation and improve community safety. During these projects, we've consistently received similar questions from residents, regardless of what part of Los Altos Hills we are operating in. This feedback indicates potentially two things. We seek to expand our community's medium around these projects, or the communication around these projects. And as we scale our vegetation management programs, how do we better educate and engage our community? To address these concerns, our team developed a multimedia approach to answer frequently asked questions around our evacuation route projects. This approach is designed to cater to a wide range of demographics and deal with today's shorter attention spans. Some common questions that we've addressed are, why are evacuation routes crucial? How does managing vegetation in our community enhance safety? And how do we minimize our impact when we're conducting our vegetation management or removal programs? We've put together a concise and engaging format in our frequently asked questions. Please get ready to watch these 3 informative videos.
An evacuation route is critical in the event of a wildfire. We think of the campfire that occurred in Paradise. Over 24 people died in their vehicles trying to escape the fire. Fuel load on the side of the roadway allowed radiant heat to kill those people in their vehicles. The project here is to eliminate that fuel. Not only the flashy grassy fuels on the ground, but the other fuels that we call ladder fuels. And likewise, then we limb up the trees so that the fire doesn't communicate up into the tree canopy. We leave the tree canopy because it's very important to keep the temperature down in the shaded area, and most importantly, keep the humidity high in the fuels so that they don't burn rapidly, generate a lot of energy, or spread the fire. By having a slower, less energetic fire, people are, 1, able to escape, and 2nd, the fire department then has time to get to the fire and can extinguish the fire.
Hi, my name is Paige Russell. I work for Los Altos Hills County Fire District, and I'm here on a vegetation management project, an evacuation route. One of the benefits to these projects is to increase visibility on the corners for roadways that are entering or exiting this main thoroughfare. And this has a twofold purpose. It increases safety by making it easier for you to see when you're entering and exiting, as well as it reduces vegetation in the event of a fire. Hi,
Denise Blue in Los Altos Hills County Fire District. We're out today on an evacuation route project, and we're talking about the environmental impact that our projects have and what we do to prepare for that. Here you'll see some pink tape. That's telling us that we have a sensitive habitat for some species. In this case, we have a nest in the background. You can notice that that nest has that pink tagging. We will stay a 6-foot bubble around that nest. So as you go along our evacuation route project and you go, hey, look, they didn't do any treatment there, it's probably because there's either been a sensitive habitat or a species that we've been told by the biologist that's gone ahead of time to stay away from.
In conclusion, our commitment to the safety and the well-being of our residents goes beyond just executing projects. It's about fostering transparent, informed, and educated community. By addressing concerns and questions proactively, we aim to build a stronger and more resilient Los Altos Hills. These are just 3 videos out of 12 that we've been producing over these last few months, and these videos will be accessible on our website and our YouTube page within the coming weeks. Thank you very much.
Great, thank you very much. I love the professional quality of those things. And by the way, all 3 of you are great presenters, so very impressed. And, yeah. Let's see.
Does anyone have any other comments before I finish up my report? Thank you very much, Jackson. That was amazing. And, you know, these videos, we do a lot of research on different websites, and we're one of the few that have these quick videos. And I really think that we're onto some really, really exciting community outreach and education. So really happy to say that, yes.
Do you have a list of the next set you're going to do? Is it, you kind of map them out as you come to them, or how do you?
Jackson, I'm going to let you answer that.
Yeah, we currently have, I believe, 13 or 14 in the final stages of editing.
Wow.
They have been basically curated and formed by staff's experience working on these projects throughout the last few years. And so they're really going to be used, like I said, as a multimedia approach to FAQs. So it's not just a text on a screen, it's an interactive video with our professionals and our staff really at the head of that message.
And is there social going out on each subject?
We just
Social
got
media?
these edits, so that'll be part of our outreach as well. Yep.
Great job, Jackson. Thank you.
All right, last slide will be Teen Cert report. The board has asked me to extend their apologies. We are now back in school full force. This is a school night, so they asked me to give their report. I think last time they talked about their involvement with the campus staff when it comes to emergency preparedness and disaster response. They were involved in the school's first fire drill on August 23rd. They responded alongside the Los Altos High School emergency preparedness staff. The vice principal of the Los Altos High School has asked them to give feedback and after action report on their thoughts of how the drill went. So they are working on some edits currently. We've also discussed putting together a Teen Cert response program so that this can be a reoccurring thing throughout the year and then the years to come, even when they graduate. So they've already got a 7-page document that they've put together with some policies and procedures that they'd like to see put in place. They've talked about their integration with the staff, and they've even gone through the bunker that is there and made some recommendations on some disaster supplies. So I've personally I've worked at a couple schools, I've never seen the allowance of the involvement of students to this level. And I think I'm hoping this will be a really great pilot program for the rest of the county. I know that in some of my leadership groups, they're very anxious to see what we do since we have the only real Teen Cert program. So we'll have some really exciting things to share. And as I talked about, their mission this year is to really educate the community, stop the bleed especially. So they've also, in their proposal, have asked to, obviously with my supervision and help and training, to provide some CPR, AED, first aid, and stop the bleed training to the people on campus, including the staff. So that kind of puts us in the arena of trying to get some grants. So they would like to do the Stop the Bleed grant. So we are working on some programming plans to increase our ability to teach more Stop the Bleed classes, which in turn will hopefully qualify us for a Stop the Bleed grant in 2024 of May, I believe is when it comes out. So that is in a report for me. I'm happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Any questions? Very good, very complete. Thank you. Any public comments? Seeing none, we will move on to item 12B. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. 12B is Community Education and Risk Reduction Programs from Community Education and Risk Reduction Manager Gluen.
Good evening, President Spring, Vice President Sherlock, and Commissioners, staff. Like to go a little bit over. Some of this is just an update. A little bit of stuff is new. Let me get some slides. I'm a little bit out of order. Item 3 and 4 are reversed in my presentation. So if you're following along strictly along the agenda, you'll see they're a little bit switched. It's okay. Yay, Corey. And thank you to Corey for all this. She makes us look so organized and together. All right, so this is just my cover, what I'm going to be going over this evening, a little bit of a sample. Next slide, please. So again, this slide you've seen many times. The bottom right-hand corner was a meeting we just had off of Snell Road here in Zone 31 for the Zone Haven mapping, or Genesis now, as it's Genesis Protect is kind of the new term that'll be moved probably in place as we move forward. We had kind of a North District and a South District representation for Firewise. So 31 and 15 were the two zones that I've mostly worked in the last couple of months. So getting on track with two new processes. We did a community risk assessment in 14. So Roos Ridge, that's your area, is very close to being in a Firewise recognized community. Next slide, please. So one of the things that we've also had, along with the items that Victoria had mentioned in her presentation, we did a Be Prepared for Wildfires. That was on August 19th. Thank you to Harmon for helping, and Jay and her husband for coming out to help me do our first hybrid presentation. This was a hybrid format, so we were simultaneously doing an in-person and remote presentation here at the town hall, which is a challenge when it's just a few people and not Corey pulling you and Victoria pulling you together. You can see one of the new things that we decided to do, because the file was so big and so many people wanted to see the PowerPoint presentation, we went ahead and, with the help of Laura, updated the website. So on our front page of the website, you can see a box in the center and you can hook onto the content of the PowerPoint. You can also, because it was hybrid, we did a recording. So you can watch a YouTube recording of the presentation alongside looking at the PowerPoint presentation. So I think this is a great way. I tried to mail out the presentation before we did this. It was very large. Even Russ helped me in making it smaller, and it was still too big for some people's emails. So this is a great way to get that information after the fact. We also are able to use, Firewise has an educational component, and they can watch this video to meet that qualification when they have new people joining their Firewise community that haven't attended their specific educational. So it's good content for then and for after the fact. So if you haven't looked at that yet, take a peek. Next slide. So one of the other things I'm covering for Paige while she's out of the country, this is what the updated, on the left-hand side of the slide, the updated HIZ registration page on our website looks like. It gives some comments about things that can be done proactively. These are included in those weed abatement letters, these recommendations, but they're set up here in the HIZ recommendations. Also, the registration is there. For the statistics for this month, this was the kind of initial program that we released down in the Rancho San Antonio area for the HIZ assessments and rebates. So we are also offering this rebate program to the Firewise communities that are coming on board. And then the numbers, we had about 15 requests. The time frame is approximately since last month. 10 have been completed, 5 are pending. Of those, 7 are rebate eligible, so that means they're either Rancho San Antonio or Firewise. 3 rebates are in process. Process means that they're eligible, that they complete the work with receipts. They submit those with photos to get that distribution of a check, and we have 1 check to date that has been distributed. Next slide. And one of the items that I just wanted to touch base is, as we are well aware of we'd mentioned that the fire up on Page Mill, that was actually called the Page Fire. There's not a single source when you're looking for, we talk about registering for early alerts, Nixle and Alert SEC, and that gives you the notification. But where do you go get information real time, not waiting for it to process through a social media venue? Couple of the platforms that I've found really helpful is, and there's not a one shop does it all, but Pulse Point, that'll be in Santa Clara County. That's agency specific. You have to register. You want to make sure on your notifications that you set that up to just be things like structure fires or wildland fires, because otherwise you get all medical and fire alarms and all that. And then a newer one that I have started using this year is Watch Duty. This is a great way today, for instance, if you were feeling like, what's all the smoke? Is there a fire close by? That first bar with all the colored icons, that's on our website. You can get the link to the second from the bottom is Watch Duty, and the bottom one is Pulse Point. You can have direct links to register. Watch Duty is actually an app on your phone. When you get their homepage, you can get a map that has the whole United States. So you don't have to look at just California, but you can see by the icons where there's active fire. So you can look if there's an active fire in your area. And then again, you have to set up settings so that you're following, if you want notifications, certain counties. So you can see I'm following 3 counties there. This next middle slide is the actual Page Fire. It's a screenshot. It gives you the location of the fire. And then the next 4th slide in the series of pictures is an update on the conditions of the fire. And then the last one is an actual photo. So if there's any fire cameras, anything like that available, it shows photos along with updates. So again, there's not one place that you can get all these notifications, but I think for me right now, using these 2 have been I was able to be real time with the fire that the chief had talked about earlier that was over in Rancho San Antonio. And then the Page Fire here. Now the Page Fire did not show up on Pulse Point because it wasn't directly, it was right on the edge of Santa Clara and San Mateo counties. So in this case, the Watch Duty was the better engine to search for information. And then last but not least, I didn't mention during Firewise is we are approved to have our first ever Firewise Recognition Day. I wanted to give you a save the date. It'll be on May the 4th, or it's in the fire service, May the 4th. Force be with you, but may the force be Firewise. We plan on having an event to celebrate the accomplishments of the members of and the residents in this community that have supported and been Firewise recognized or in process with a fun event. More details to come. So save the date of the first Saturday in May, which is the 4th. And that's the end of my report, and I can take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll make a comment that, this evening when I was trying to figure out about where the smoke's coming from, I Googled it and the news just said Northern California, Oregon. But it was on Manager Glewin's advice that early in the week, I actually installed Watch Duty, and it really gives the clear picture of what's going on. So I definitely recommend it. I used to use Pulse Point, but this is a much better, I find, picture of what's going on. So it's definitely Watch Duty is a good app to put on your phone if you're interested.
One question, really quick one. Is there any cause of this fire that has been identified, or is it just?
Well, one of the ones that's up on the edge of the Siskiyou, at the edge of it's actually a complex fire now, so it was several fires joined together. It's the Happy Something complex fire, so that's common practice.
Okay.
When fires are regionally close to each other, they put the resources into what they call a complex, so it's more of a unified command of all of those different fires together using those shared resources. Some of those extra smoke might actually be vegetation that's less dry because of the wet year. So that may be one of the reasons we have more smoke being produced, because the vegetation might not be quite dried out enough to burn, but vegetation that's slightly wet is smokier. So that might be a cause of, because it's not a significant fire as far as acreage yet. I mean, it's big, but it's not like we had in the past and we didn't get these kinds. And then varying winds. The winds may just be happening to come south. So, yeah.
Yeah, those are all wonderful points. What I'm trying to find out if does this watch duty shows the cause of the fire in addition to the characterization of the fire.
No, it just gives an update on what it will show it, like on the page fire, it did say a vehicle fire. So it may, if they know. A lot of times fire origin is not known right away. If it's something as obvious as a vehicle catching fire and spreading into the wildland, then they do mention that on size up, but not all the time.
Yeah, I would say it gives a lot of, if you click on a fire, it gives you a lot of information about that fire, not necessarily the cause, but as you says, the acreage, the active status, the percentage, links to Facebook where the local service providers have information. So I can't imagine how you get more information than from here.
The only thing I will tell you, if you go on Pulse Point for Santa Clara County, it's again, not all counties, but Santa Clara County, when you click on the incident, there's a little mute icon. And if you hit that, you can listen to radio traffic. So if you actually want to hear this is typed traffic on watch duty, but you can hear actual radio traffic going on. So if you hit the icon, you basically unmute it, you can hear that going on and monitor that way also.
Thank you.
Great, thank you very much. Or any public questions, comments?
Yes, that watch duty really loads fast.
Yeah.
Only took 10 seconds or so.
It's an effective app. I've been very impressed with it in the short time I've been using it.
And let me just give it one more plug. It is a 501(c) nonprofit. So if you are looking for places to also donate along with Fire Safe Council, those are some nonprofits you could consider. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no more comments, we will move on to, let's see, 12C. This is the IHFR, the Integrated Hazardous Fuel Reduction Field Operations Reports from Technical Analyst Project Manager Cronin.
President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, Commissioners. We're going to talk about the exciting topic of biomass disposal. And I have a video. Are we able to play that? Video? Maybe. I put it up there, but it's riveting. Put it in the upload folder. If it's not apparent, we can just go in my slides and can share that later. That's all right. Let's go ahead and show our slides, and we'll just do that for tonight. We should have more of this topic in upcoming meetings as well.
Okay.
All right, so climate change, we have seen some of the effects of that in real time. We increased storms, drought, these incredible fires that we're seeing. And there's a couple of things that are driving that. And one of the identified causes is the amount of biomass that we have that could be treated better. Now, as you know, I'm a fan of biomass. We have great programs here and we generate a fair amount of it. I'll start off with the good news is we're doing a great job with it, doing the right thing, but there's opportunities to do even more. So biomass, if it goes into the landfill, as soon as it hits the landfill, it's polluted and it can't be repurposed. So the banana peel can no longer be turned into compost. In the landfill, it goes through an anaerobic process, which is digestion, versus anaerobic one, which is decomposition. And in that, it generates methane. So methane is a very small carbon molecule with hydrogens and oxygens and all that. And it's really nasty compared to carbon dioxide. We already know carbon dioxide's, that's kind of tough, but plants love carbon dioxide. They turn into oxygen for us. So that's not as, I'd rather produce carbon dioxide than methane. And methane is 84% more detrimental. In what regards I haven't fully gotten, but I know, it's a hydrocarbon gas. And our landfills produce 21% of the methane that we're producing come from our landfills, and most of that is biomass that is digesting. And it's the third largest generation of methane that we have. So we want to eliminate that. And the way to do that is to properly recycle biomass and decompose it and use it into other things, such as what do I have at home? Anyway, I'm missing the word here. So we can use it in agricultural products, right? So we can use it as fertilizer for our plants and things like that. So now that is being used by the plant to feed it and make more oxygen. So it's a good cycle to get that into. All right. Well, you did find the video. Okay. Let's take a quick break and take a look at this video because it's going to introduce a topic that I want to tell you about.
Climate change is no longer the future.
It's completely engulfed and it is hot.
It's already here.
California is hitting a fearsome milestone. We're experiencing temperatures, world record breaking temperatures in the state of California, 130 degrees.
We're seeing bigger wildfires, stronger storms, and devastating droughts.
I'm standing currently 40 feet underwater, or should be. Today, we are advancing a drought emergency.
But both the state and here at CalRecycle, we're doing something about it.
SB 1383 is the biggest change to happen in waste management in over 30 years.
The new super pollutant reduction strategy rules for organics recycling and edible food recovery are part of California's bold effort to fast-track climate progress by reducing the most potent climate super pollutants like landfill methane emissions. Food, fiber, wood, and other organic waste materials make up the largest material types landfilled in California every year. When organic waste material decomposes, it emits methane, a short-lived climate super pollutant 84 times more potent than carbon dioxide, and a major contributor to climate change. California's short-lived climate pollutant reduction law calls on the state's 40 million people, its businesses, and every level of government to reduce landfill methane emissions by achieving a 75% statewide reduction in organic waste disposal by 2025. The state is encouraging cities and counties to start planning now.
There is a need for more infrastructure to process food waste.
To provide organics collection services to every resident and business in the state. By using innovative methods to make and use compost, we'll create things like biofuel and electricity and turn depleted dirt back into nutrient-rich, water-retaining soil.
The really big solution here is taking on the climate crisis.
Because it's still possible, I think, to avoid the worst outcomes.
Thank you, Corey. All right. So SB 1383 mandates that municipalities, cities, counties, and it even says districts that collect biomass are responsible for abiding by this state bill. Now, whether it applies to our district, it's unclear yet, and we'll do the research on that. The good news is we're already well in compliance, but let's do better. We have 3 programs that generate our biomass. We have the collection at once a month over at Foothill College, and those are provided by green waste trucks that do that. We have our evacuation route hardening projects. We're going to probably be on target next year with 6. We're going to probably get 5 done this year. And then, of course, we have our ever popular defensible space brush chipping program. Let's go to the next one. All right. So monthly, our collection at Foothill is about 6 tons per month. Our evacuation route projects are about 10 to 20 tons. Our chipping program over the last 18 months has averaged 830 tons. And over the last 7 months, 1,337 tons. That's a big opportunity. Right now, our collection is done by our contractors, and they take it to a recycling place, but it's their choice. Many of them go to a recycler that is actually just a transfer station, and it gets moved then to another place, often out in the center, into the San Joaquin Valley, and it's generated into electricity out there. Because of the volume that we produce, if we were to put it all together, we have a significant volume that we can be of interest to our recyclers. There are some companies that would like to expand their operation, but to do that, they got to prove that they have the need. Well, we are providing quite a lot. Similarly, there may be a cost benefit for the district if we're saying, hey, I'm not buying 5 apples, I'm buying crate loads of apples. So we might be able to get a cost difference, but that's not really the big thing. Is instead of taking it to a transfer station where I really kind of lose tracking, I don't know where it goes. What if I own that and I have a partner, and instead of putting it in a diesel truck and driving it out to the Central Valley, we try and keep it locally within the area. We promote new jobs to build these facilities and to run these facilities. We generate organic byproducts or agricultural products that are used locally. Another little twist on that SB 1383 is that if you use agricultural products, 75% of them should be recycled. And so here's if it's made locally, we can get that and use that where we need to. We're already doing that stuff, so it's not a stretch for us, but it would be nice to keep that regionally within our own economy, generate those jobs, generate that work. And so with that, I'm here to just give you a pep talk that we're doing a great job and we're investigating, well, how could we do something better? And in the future, we'll probably come to you with some decisions. But right now, I just want you to be aware of, we're producing a lot of biomass, and we're doing some good stuff with it. We can do better. And I really like that we can do some regional improvements to really help out and be able to track that a little bit better. Right. End of report.
I have a question. This seems like this is the kind of initiative that is aims for partnerships. Have you identified any potential partners that can facilitate this or speed it up and stuff like that?
I have.
Okay. So but you're not ready to talk about it?
I'd rather not yet.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd rather not yet because I don't know if they're able to, we got to get the right people in the room first. Right now, it's just me. So
I get you.
I don't want to overstep my bounds. But yeah, there is potential. And that's only one that I've identified. And I don't want to say it too soon in case there are others. But I've identified the requirements I'd like. I'd like a local place to drop this off. I would like the processing to be local to the transfer station where we do put it. And I want to make sure that they offer agricultural products for us. And so I got one that can do that, and there may be more.
George?
Sure. Let me just suggest you could use me as a conduit to communicate with Silicon Valley Clean Energy. Silicon Valley Clean Energy recently signed a contract with a biomass conversion company that's located in Southern California to acquire some of the electricity that comes from that facility. I see a bunch of hurdles, so I'm going to say I'm not sure this is a slam dunk, Ryan, but I do happen to be currently the chair of the board of Silicon Valley Clean Energy, and I'd be glad to help you have a conversation.
Fabulous. Yeah. I'm excited about the potential for this.
Excellent. Excellent. Good connection. Any other comments? Great, thanks, sir.
Thank you very much.
Let's see. Any public comments on that? Make sure everyone, don't see any raised hands. Okay. We'll now move on to item 12C2, the update on the Magdalena Summerhill evacuation route project. And this will be Field Manager Harmon, I believe.
Thank you, President Spreen. Hello and good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'll be presenting the updates for the Magdalena Summerhill evacuation project. During the course of the presentation, I'll be discussing the completed items, the upcoming tasks, and then a brief segment at the end about intersections and fire hydrants as it relates to agenda item 12C2. If you'd like, you can follow along with the slides that have been presented in front of you. I'd like to begin with the items that we've successfully completed so far, starting with CEQA. The California Environmental Quality Act compliance has been filed, and the county waiting period is complete. Our consultant, Jackson's Drones, has conducted a pre-project drone flyover to assess the project area and capture metrics related to the project. The project scope of work has been created and clearly defined, outlining the tasks to be performed. A comprehensive traffic control plan has been developed to ensure the public and worker safety during the course of the project. Detailed location, project, and parcel maps have been prepared for the reference during the planning and the implementation phases of the project. Project information is available now on both the LAHCFD websites and the Santa Clara County website project pages. Project postcards, they've been created and mailed. This is a new step for our evacuation routes. Using lessons learned from the past projects regarding residents' feedback about ROE mailers, the district is adding a project postcard in advance of the ROE mailing. Postcards with project details have been created and mailed as of Monday, the 18th, yesterday, to inform the community of the upcoming project ahead of the packets that will be mailed with the appropriate forms requesting their permission to treat their properties. The goal is to alert folks of the upcoming project and the importance of returning the ROE as they receive it a week before the postcards. This also aligns with the timing of our roadside sandwich boards. Project community meeting schedule. This is also a new strategy designed to enhance the community messaging around the goals of the evacuation route project, timing of the traffic impacts, and the importance of participation to help build and foster those community relationships. There has been a community meeting scheduled for October 11th via Zoom to engage the residents and address the concerns.
For your hair? Oh.
Okay, if you're on Zoom, could you make sure you mute your mic, please? Thanks.
All right. To continue, the next slide to be completed. Thank you, Corey. I'd like to move on to the upcoming tasks that will carry us through the remainder of the project. Resident outreach. We will continue our outreach efforts to keep residents informed and involved. Sandwich boards, cover letters, and a right of entry form. Additional communication material will be distributed, including sandwich boards, cover letters, and the right of entry form as early as next week. We will be conducting door-to-door knocking visits in the neighborhood to address individual concerns. The community meeting, that's the one I previously mentioned. Our partners at the Fire Safe Council will implement the process of seeking contract proposals, conducting walkthroughs, and evaluating bids. Once the bids are awarded and assessed, once the bids are received and assessed, contracts will be awarded to the selected vendors. Biologist field visit and flagging of the project. Approximately 1 to 2 weeks prior to the start of the date, the biologist will visit a site to assess the environmental considerations and flag the project area accordingly. Contract logistics coordination, the FSC Fire Safe Council will coordinate logistics with the contractors to ensure a smooth project execution. Work scheduled to commence. Our project is currently set to start on October 23rd, pending, any unforeseen circumstances. Post-project drone flyover. After the completion of a project, the post-project drone flyover will be conducted to assess measurements and gain more metrics on the work we've completed. That will also be done by Jackson Ricketts drone company. Involving invoicing and payments, contractor invoicing and payment processing will be managed by the Fire Safe Council. Data collection and organization. Data collected during the project will be organized and documented for record keeping and reporting purposes. And then we'll have the final report. A comprehensive final report will be prepared to summarize the project's outcomes and will be presented at a future meeting just like this one. To summarize, we are diligently working towards project completion while ensuring transparency and community involvement. Finally, I'd like to take a moment to share some information regarding the treatment of intersections and fire hydrants. Along the project route, there have been several fire hydrants identified which are in need of brush clearing. With the unusual weather patterns experienced earlier this year, there has been more vegetation growth than in previous years. We're taking the time to consider the safety aspect of making sure intersections and fire hydrants are going through to be cleared appropriately according to the municipal and fire codes you see listed in the slide in front of you. By making sure intersections are cleared accordingly to those standards described in the slide, we are ensuring good visibility for traffic, cyclists, pedestrians, and emergency services. Additionally, the attention to detail when clearing the vegetation from around the fire hydrants will lead to efficient utilization by firefighter personnel when the situation calls for it. Clearing vegetation from these hydrants will also make them more visible to the public and possibly increase the chance of avoiding vehicular hydrant strikes. In conclusion, the public safety is our primary concern, and by making sure we're including intersection and fire hydrant clearing, we're taking one more step to making sure that we at the Los Altos Hills County Fire District, in partnership with our Santa Clara County Fire Safe Council, are maximizing our efforts to ensure public safety and survivability in the event of an unforeseen emergency event. Thank you for your attention during my presentation. That is the end of my report.
Any questions or comments on this project? One question, and this is just my impression of Summerhill, is that there's a lot, and look at the map, a lot of houses that come right up to the road, and there's not a whole lot of margin there. Is this different than some homes did in the past in terms of how much the road right-of-way extends into people's yards? Is there going to be more issue of people thinking, hey, you're in my yard when you're really in the right-of-way?
No, that's part of why we're reaching out to everyone to make sure that we do have permissions.
Okay.
This evacuation route is actually an extension of the previous project we did that will get people to the interstate in the event of an emergency evacuation.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Good. Well,
Roger, I think you described Page Mill Road more than you described Summerhill.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Having the last time I walked Summerhill, which has been a while, it's like you just, there's so much stuff right there. People feel like in people's yards sometimes. So I appreciate all the contact with the neighbors it takes to do this project. So thank you.
If I can make a comment, if you noticed, Harmon, could you mention the chart or the photo that you have on your slide? Harmon depicted how the vegetation would be managed back.
No, I didn't mention that. Corey,
Yeah,
if
but
you'd
if
like
you
to go
could.
back to the slide, I can.
Because it really gets to the point, the vegetation comes right down the road. Now, what do you do with it?
Mm-hmm.
And so that's part of the illustration we provide the resident.
I see. Good.
Okay. Give me 1 second. Yeah, that's correct. If you give me 1 second, I'm pulling it. I can't see what that says up there. Yeah.
Oh, it's okay. I didn't mean to bring on additional effort here. Oh.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so if you can see in there, I tried to illustrate here the distance, giving you kind of an assessment of the way we would treat the project. the distance from the center of the road as well as what we'll be doing alongside of the road, and that we will be treating the vegetation up to a height in accordance with our scope of work.
I can't wait to actually go walk it now beforehand so I can be familiar with it before and after. Great. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, not a problem.
Any public questions or comments? I'm expecting, since we don't have any public here, I guess I don't see any online. I guess we're okay there. Okay, this takes us to item 13, personnel. And this will be General Manager Logan presenting this item.
Yes, thank you, President Spreen. Item 13A is a proposed technical data analyst employment agreement and position description, which are included in the agenda packet along with the applicant's resume and a staff memorandum report. California Government Code Section 54953C3 requires the commission to orally report a summary of the proposed compensation before taking final action to adopt that compensation, here by approving the employment agreement. The proposed at-will, part-time, temporary, technical data analyst employment agreement will be effective as of the date of the agreement is fully executed to April 1st, 2024, and includes the following compensation. Wages, the proposed agreement sets the pay rate at $60 per hour, up to an average of 80 hours per month. Benefits, under the proposed agreement, the position will receive certain benefits, including sick leave of 24 hours per year is provided upon completion of 120 calendar days of employment per state law. Sick leave can be accrued up to a maximum of 48 hours with no cash out of sick leave on termination, and a vehicle stipend of $150 per month. The proposed employment agreement does not provide vacation, holiday pay, medical benefits, or retirement benefits, and the district provides a laptop and supportive equipment necessary to perform for the performance of duties. And the recommendation is approval. I'd just like to say that this position, if you go to my memorandum report, the position has been on our budget and has been under recruitment since 2020. And we've just not been able to find the person with these kinds of skills. And luckily, have found that individual now, Mr. Edgar Martinez, who I've talked with at length, talked with his supervisors, and just very excited in bringing him in. And he has 30 years of being a technical data analyst. His resume is in the packet and has been very, very successful in those endeavors, both with public safety in police and fire. So he's very familiar with our terminology. And I think he'll just be a great asset. As you've seen through all these reports, think of all the data we're harvesting. I mean, it's just amazing. I almost need a Costco warehouse to put it all in. And how are we going to utilize it? How are we going to digest it, analyze it, and then make it a better product that gives us continuous improvement of our programs in brush chipping, evacuation routes, HIZs, all of these kinds of things we do. And then we put the work plans on top of it, and we want to report back as to what our effectiveness has been. So this data analyst position, I think, is very important. Again, it is part-time. It is a temporary position, 6 months. We'll see how it works out, and I'm excited to have this opportunity and also to finally make that inroad into our budget. It's been budgeted now for a number of years. So with that, I recommend approval, and thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, General Manager Logan. Any clarifying questions from the commission? No, I'd love to get this kind of support for you for the kinds of projects you're doing right now. I will now entertain a motion. Will the commissioner making the motion and the one seconding, please state your names.
Basiji moves that they approve.
Warren seconds.
Thank you very much. Let's see, any comment, any discussion? Seeing none, any public comments? Seeing none, let's move to the roll call.
President Spreen?
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock?
Yes.
Commissioner Basiji?
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald?
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson?
Yes.
Commissioner Warren?
Yes.
And the motion passes 6-0 with 1 absent.
Thank you so much. We'll now move on to item 14, which is the IT responsibility statement. This is going to be Finance Manager Morreale providing us a report.
Thank you, President Spreen, Vice President Sherlock, and members of the commission. And thank you, Corey, for the PowerPoint. This item 14 has to do with the introduction of an IT user's responsibility statement. Staff is really pleased to bring this to you for your review as we enter into the next phase of the technology development for the district. Next slide, please. The user responsibility statement is presented for initial comment, realizing that it's quite an important and extensive document. Its approval is anticipated at the upcoming October meeting, and we think this will allow ample time for its review and consideration. In the interim, we will plan the staging of district-wide staffing that will follow soon after its approval in October. Tonight's action has no fiscal impact, as no requests for funding or purchases are being made. It does have a strong connection to the strategic plan in enhancing staff training and providing best practices in the area of technology.
Thank you.
And the next statement, please. The purpose of the user statement is really to set minimum responsibilities that go along with being granted access to or use to district devices, systems, or networks. It informs users of district systems on the proper use and care of technology, and also requests acknowledgement of having received and read and understood the statement. It assigns levels of approval authorities for the purchase, installation, upgrade, and maintenance of district-owned systems. Such statements are really quite common, both in the private arena and government agencies. The development of this statement really has been a long process. It began last year in 2022 with initial discussions with our IT managed services provider, Eaton and Associates. Since then, it's undergone several internal draft iterations and included input from staff about device uses and protocols. The user statement was created relying on known industry standards, but there's really been a special focus on government agencies in particular. The key discussions and review with County Counsel Aaron Forbeth have been very helpful and allowed us to craft a document that aligns specifically with the County of Santa Clara model, both in its format, content, spirit. And that was an important feature of how this document was designed and crafted. Next slide, please. So why are we doing this? With the recent growth in staffing, a new budget focus, and a developing work plans, the district has expanded its technology model greatly. Fiscal year 22-23 saw the first major move to provide staff, and in some cases, select contractors with district purchased and owned devices. This past year, the district purchased laptops, laptop accessories, iPads, and cell phones for staff use in a home office environment and also in the field. We believe this distribution of the technology empowers functionality while adding important layers of security, standardization, and documented instruction. Next slide, please. The document before you is organized into the following sections. It has a basic introduction. It includes definitions. It has a code of responsibility. It speaks to privacy and ownership of data. It really addresses internet, email, and electronic communications use. It discusses personally owned devices and how they could be used. And again, it acknowledges receipt of the standard and that it was issued to staff. In my experience, even though this is 13 pages in length, I've seen IT policies and IT statements that are much longer than this. So we really tried to make it as concise as possible. And we went to great lengths to make sure that it excluded or avoided technical jargon. So we hope that you find it readable in the end result. Next slide, please. In the definition section, it suffices to say that users essentially include all district employees, as well as anyone that is given expressed approval to access district systems. Users also include vendors and external independent contractors who have been given rights to use the district devices, systems, and/or applications. Next slide, please. The umbrella of district information devices, systems, and networks is really quite broad. It includes, among many other things, all district-owned, rented, or leased servers. We don't have servers at this time, but it plans for that eventuality. desktop computers, laptops, handheld devices, PCs, PDAs, and other peripheral equipment. It also includes data storage portals, application systems, databases, and softwares. In essence, it's every device that we own and or have management of, and all the communication systems and software that contains that data. That includes the universe that this particular user statement is speaking to. Next statement. Next slide, please. The section 1 entitled General Code of Responsibilities, which is on page 2 through 6, speaks about required approvals for purchases of systems. It addresses the importance of password protocols. It also defines the use of managed IT services through Eaton and Company. It also stresses the importance of protecting district assets and remaining within assigned system rights. It also indicates a requirement to use only district-approved systems as approved by management. And next slide, please. Section 1 also speaks very importantly to privacy. It clarifies the fact that the district owns data that flows in and through its network of systems. It speaks to the use and installation of remote management tools by the district. And the key point that it also communicates is that all data within the district systems are subject to the California Public Records Act as well. It makes it clear that users should have no expectation of privacy when it comes to electronic data stored within the district information systems. And it also emphasizes that confidential data must be protected and handled properly. It also disallows the use of district devices and systems for personal use or business gain. And next slide, please. We deal with email quite extensively, as you know, and section 2 deals with email communications, and it outlines a definition of proper etiquette. This statement expressly states that email has important operational value, and electronic communications should well represent and reflect the district as a governmental institution. This section includes a discussion of etiquette. It stresses the importance of emails being respectful to all parties. It encourages emails being concise and clear. The section allows personal use, but only on a limited and incidental basis. And that is when we're talking about email, personal use of email only if it's incidental. It discourages the use of non-district email addresses, and it requires that email passwords never be shared and be protected. Next slide, please. Section 1 also addresses the treatment of vendors and non-employees, and by non-employees, I mean contractors and consultants, if they are provided access to the systems. This section indicates that vendors can, in fact, use district systems with approval and under certain conditions. Again, the vendor access must have management approval, and the vendors must acknowledge this user's statement of responsibility. And we suspect going forward that this actual statement will be attached to contracts as vendors enter into them, acknowledging that they understand the importance of our technology environment and our practices. It also advises users that IT managed services may need to configure devices to conform with district standards if that is necessary. The next slide. Section 4 deals with the important, but I have to admit, sometimes obscure and complex discussion of the use of personal owned devices. Realizing that we live in this hybrid world, and especially in the district's case, because we're essentially nearly 100% remote, this section provides some important guidance. In this section, you will see that it discourages the use of personal devices when it's avoidable. It advises the users that personal devices may need IT managed services configuration and updated. It advises the users that privacy, again, should not be expected when using personal devices. But it also reasonably allows the use of personal devices for both personal and district business within certain conditions. In this particular section, there are certain conditions that are excluded from this section's requirement. Section 4 does not apply when devices are strictly used for the purpose of making cell phone or telephone calls or radio wave calls, or the authorized use of Outlook or other cloud-based applications are used with no editing, storing, or retention of download district data. The key takeaway is that the use of devices, personal devices, solely for communications without data retention and download is in fact permitted. So with that ends this presentation. I know this is quite a large statement and document, and it's gone through quite a bit of vetting, but we really look forward to your comments, not only this evening, but over the course of the next few weeks until we get to October. And with that, that ends my presentation, and I'm not sure if Aaron, you wanted to make some comments as well in this regard, as you were closely involved in this process.
Thank you, Russ. My only comment would be to flag, I think it's a really wonderful element of this statement that there's this 2-column format and that every piece of information is distilled into a really understandable key point in plain language. I think it's a really useful model of how these type of jargon-filled and technical policy statements can be made user-friendly. And also to say that I'm happy to answer questions that come up about this policy leading up to the October meeting.
Yeah, really, any comments, questions here? I'm like two myself. One is that really the 2 takeaways for me. One is that we have a homework assignment. So between now and next time, really read through it. And I know it's detailed, but it's worth looking at everything so we can have some questions for next time. And second, it's a reminder of how crazy it is that everything we do here is so webbed in with all kinds of systems. I mean, it used to be just we had email. Years ago, we just had email accounts, and that already was tough. Now there's so many data systems, with all the ground data we have, all the truthing data, all the data we've built from all different programs. Everything's electronic, all our management systems. And it's better that we be proactive on something like this than reactive to someone catching us with our pants down about not really having done things correctly. So I appreciate everyone's time having done this before we've done something wrong. So that's my takeaways.
I understand the initiative and the reason for it, and I also appreciate I'm a member of many organizations, and all of them are having me certify my resistance to phishing, and lots of things. So I just want to check to make sure that there's training for people involved with this as well to how to use these properly. So I do understand that. And I am a little unclear whether board members who have district phone, email addresses, where we fall in terms of our personal devices and all this.
Well, I think we should read through because we are users under the definition of that with our email accounts. And obviously I know how familiar you are with public records business and so forth, but I think as it reads, we are allowed to use our private devices for that because of where the data is stored and where it resides. But a good question, because obviously that's central for how a multi-organizational person like yourself is going to work. So.
Well, I was hoping somebody was going to offer to buy me a new laptop. I don't need one.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions, any comments? Again, hopefully everyone will read it over this coming month, and we'll be discussing it more and approving it, hopefully next month. But thank you, Russ, for taking us through the details of it. And everyone here has some technical training, and hopefully will come at it and understands why we're doing it. Any public comments?
Thank you so much.
Any public comments on this? Not seeing any raised hands, and I see no one here. Great, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate it. All right, item 15A and B are to receive a report on the fiscal year 25. And I know we've talked a lot of budgets and audits and so forth, so you have to get your years correct here. This is the future. fiscal year 25 budget development report and to discuss and consider establishment of an ad hoc budget subcommittee for the upcoming fiscal year 25. Financial consultant Vargas, could you please provide a report for this?
Yes, I'm happy to. So I get to be the bad guy tonight doing the last big report that everyone's going to be mad at me because they got home late, but I'll try and make this as quick and concise as possible. I'm going to be discussing in the memo report A and B, also C and D. So, tonight we're looking to discuss and appoint a ad hoc budget subcommittee for fiscal year 25. And then another action item will be to approve the end date for that subcommittee. And just everybody here, I think except Toby, has been through a budget process with us before. This is an annual process. The County of Santa Clara Board of Supervisors require us, because we're a dependent district of the county, to submit through the Office of Budget and Analysis, which I'll refer to as OBA, a budget for the fiscal year, which starts July 1st through June 30th. In this case, July 1st, 2024, June 30th, 2025. And as we do annually, this has become a tradition for us. The commission appoints a budget subcommittee, which is made up of 1 to 3 commission members. That's less than a quorum. They meet in a public forum that usually takes place in late October, early November, before the November meeting. And then they help to work with staff to develop a draft budget that will then be presented to the full commission in November. We bring it back in January because if you look at the timeline, OBA does not actually provide us with revenues until I think it was like January 11th this year. So they're providing us with our revenue estimates on January 11th, and then our meeting is like a week later. So it's pretty much you're going to get a preliminary draft in November. Provide your questions, really the expenses is what you're looking at because county provides the revenue estimates for us. So we then reconvene budget subcommittee and staff to do a draft budget at the January meeting, which then we will submit to OBA by their due date, which is February 2nd, 2024. At then the February meeting, commission meeting, there might be more subsequent changes that were made after the January meeting, but before the February 2nd submittal, and it's usually to revenues. So then at the February meeting, we present a final draft with all the final numbers from county. Commission formally approves that. Then that gets taken to the Board of Supervisors. They go through their public hearing, their workshops, their public hearing. They approve our final budget in June, and then the commission approves the final budget after the Board of Supervisors. So that is kind of the timeline. So our recommendations for tonight, obviously, is to appoint that budget subcommittee of 3 or fewer members, and then set the end date. And we're recommending, since OBA's draft submission date is February 2nd of 2024, that's what the end date will be, because once the draft is submitted, there's no need for a subcommittee anymore. So thank you.
Thank you. I'll add that, I think I've been on the ad hoc subcommittee or have been the ad hoc subcommittee for quite a few years now. And it really does go in fits and starts just because the schedule is of when information comes in and when it has to go out is outside of our control, and it kind of requires fits and starts. I think this year, given the amount of work that our staff has done in both getting, looking at multi-year plans, looking at budgets, looking at what we're going to need and resources, I think there's so much more planning going into this is going to make it,
the word plan
easier for us as an ad hoc subcommittee, where
easier.
we used to be having to sort of do that. I think the staff has so much more to contribute to it. I'm looking forward to it, and selfishly, I'm looking much more forward to it because I think so much stuff is going into it that we never had before. So I'm going to put my hand up to stay on it and keep my record.
We're not at that item yet, but now we're just more discussing.
I want people to understand that's what this is going to be.
We're doing this, right?
I expect it will be different, and I'm looking forward to I'm hoping you will vote me on that ad hoc subcommittee and potentially 2 others who would like to join for that. I think it'll be really interesting this year, given all the new information planning going forward to it. I'm getting a little ahead of you. We need to create let's see, what else do you need to say before we decide to create the subcommittee?
Yeah, so that is pretty much just, I provided a summary. Now we're going to move then to 15C to appoint a subcommittees. And if you would like to read it, I can read it if you'd like.
Basically, I think, do 1 or 2 people want to put their hands up with me?
Yeah, just for the record, I want to say that the focus of the ad hoc subcommittee will be to meet with staff and in a public forum, plan and develop a draft fiscal year 25 budget for presentation to the commission at future meetings. As an ad hoc subcommittee, it will not be subject to meeting rules required under the Brown Act. We're made up of less than a quorum of the commission, which is 3 or fewer members. The commission, if the commission is amendable, then now would be the time to.
I know you're reading the part I was supposed to read, but I'm so familiar with what the subcommittee does. I guess I should be more open to it. Anyone else want to do it? I think you should. I don't think you realize how clueless someone needs to be to have done this before. So you'll join. Cluelessness should not keep you off this committee, as I've learned in my years of doing this. I know, but no, it's really. I think you're going to see. It's a very impressive process to be a part of, and one of the major project processes we are a part of. So as a commission, to gain that insight, I think you will really enjoy it and see more of where this comes from. Otherwise, it's really where the rubber hits the road. No. Anyone else want to? You don't need to. It's up to you. If you okay, well, for now, Jim and I, and we can always add another one later. So anyone else? Jim, I'm happy to have you. If you're busy, that's fine. But don't let noviceness keep you off. Absolutely. Let's add Jim. Okay. If you can't be there, it's no problem. It's an ad hoc subcommittee. No pressure for it. So I think it's great.
Yeah, it's just one meeting held in a public setting so that members of the public can provide their feedback, and happens on an evening. Last year, I think it was a Thursday evening, about 2 weeks before the November commission meeting. So early November would probably be the aim.
Yeah, it's not an extensive hourly input. It's really more visibility up front.
We do all the work and then
to respond to staff to help them when there's questions about what needs to be visible. We think about what's being presented early on.
If you're like, oh, you shouldn't be paying the district clerk $1 million, then that would be the time that you would. Yeah,
exactly. So it's good to see how the sausage gets made when it comes to budgets. So great. So I think we have anyone would like to make a motion for these 3?
Warren moves to create a budget subcommittee with a ad hoc budget subcommittee for the FY 2024-25 fiscal year with an end date of February 2nd, 2024. With the appointed commission members.
Sherlock seconds that.
Is that end date okay?
The end date is written as a separate, but Aaron, is it okay if they combine it into one?
Sure.
Yeah. Oh, we have legal counsel's permission to. Look, we just shortened the meeting by about 1 minute. So.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Any discussion? Any public comment? Let's take a roll call.
Okay, President Spreen.
Yes.
Vice President Sherlock.
Yes.
Commissioner Basigi.
Yes.
Commissioner McDonald.
Yes.
Commissioner Tyson.
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
All right, and the commission has approved a creation of the ad hoc FY25 subcommittee with Commissioners Spreen, McDonald, and Basigi serving, and with an end date of February 2nd, 2024, at a count of 6-0-1 absent.
Great. So I think that completely does us for item 15. Okay, moving to item 16, commission member reports. This is an opportunity for commissioners to provide reports on any future agenda topics. Are there any comments from the commission?
Actually, I have one. For one.
We're breaking a record.
Yes. years worth.
Okay. Wow.
So I apologize for missing August. I'd like a request that we revisit the 280 grant proposal project, where we are with that. And I'd like to see if we can, explore potentially district finances activities on that, and decoupling from the FEMA grant process. We have tremendous financial resources. I'd like the staff to explore potential, district financed options to get that project moving.
Okay. Sounds good to me. Well, I think the request, without going into the topic itself, the request here is let's put that on our agenda coming up to find out where we are, what the options are, what we think the probabilities are at this point. So I think that's wonderful. So
I think that's a highly appropriate topic.
great. Thank you, sir. Let's see, any other commissioner requests and comments? No? Okay, let's see, any public comment on this item? I don't think so, and seeing none. Thank you. Yes, Eugenia, please.
May I ask for a clarification as your grants manager? The award schedule is October, so we should know the waiting list results in October. Cross your fingers. Do you want Commissioner Warren's request at the October meeting or at the November meeting? So that we have the results of yay or nay on the waiting list of grant.
So I don't obviously know the timing of the grant notification if it coincides with our meeting. If obviously you get an update by that, the October meeting, we should get an update at that. And quite honestly, I'd like us to lean in on this. Let's assume that FEMA isn't going to grant us the app, we're not going to be granted the grant. I'd like us to not spend another month waiting for potential, other ways to pursue this project. And it might just be what are contingencies, A and B and C that we could go pursue, decoupling from FEMA.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Sounds like serendipitous timing too, as well. Thank you.
One final comment here. So that September 30th Touch a Truck, I went to it last year at the town hall, and it was a ton of fun. September 30th, 9 to 11. I'll be there.
Good.
I'll be there with a 2-year-old.
I want to say because the CERT folks there, yeah. Okay, item 16B is the notice that the next regular commission meeting is scheduled for October 17th, 2023, in person and hybrid at this same town hall council chambers. Any issue with that or questions or comments about that from the commission? Seeing none. Any public comments on that scheduling? Seeing none. We will move on to item 17, adjournment. This concludes the September 19th, 2023 regular meeting of the Los Altos Hills County Fire District. The meeting is adjourned at 9:38 p.m. Emergency Services Manager Beebe, please stop the recording. And thank you all for participating.